Welcome to Creepy Loop. Today, we've got a scary story about Jacob and a mysterious guy named Leon. They go on a weird adventure that'll give you goosebumps. Make sure to hit like and subscribe for more creepy tales. Jacob stumbled out of the Atlantis casino, feeling really sick. He rushed over to a fancy bush and threw up. He'd never felt this awful before. Even when he was 16 and got beaten up really badly by some guys, it wasn't as bad as this. His spirit felt crushed in a way he never thought possible. He used everything he had to join a big poker tournament, hoping to turn things around. Jacob had been a professional poker player for almost 20 years, making a lot of money. He even came close to winning the World Series of Poker twice. He had a nice beach house, a cool city loft, expensive cars, and got to travel the world, all because he was good at playing a game he loved. He wasn't the absolute best, but he was consistent, making almost $1 million every year, until last year. Everything started falling apart. First, he lost his money in his home country, then in other countries, and he even lost his stocks and bonds. Then, his luck got worse when he had to sell his expensive things like jewelry, his motorcycle, and even his couch and coffee table. It was clear that things were really bad. Jacob was good at playing poker by the rules, but the past year had been full of big losses. Unlikely situations kept happening, like losing to a straight flush with an ace-high flush or losing with 4 kings to 4 aces. These weren't just regular losses. They felt really unfair and almost impossible. Jacob started wondering if the whole game was rigged against him. Every time he thought things couldn't get worse, they did. It felt like a never-ending streak of bad luck. Jacob was in big trouble. He was so desperate to play in a poker tournament that he did everything possible to get money. He sold everything he had, asked for favors from everyone he knew, even took loans from not-so-great groups. He even went to the blood bank a few times. All this just to get into one last tournament. If he could finish in the top 30, he'd have enough money to pay off his debts and start fresh. Everything he owned and everything he was counting on was on the line in this tournament. But, as luck would have it, he ended up at a table with a player called a donk. Donks were players who didn't care about winning. They were usually young people with too much money and not enough patience for a whole tournament. Their idea of fun was messing with serious players like Jacob, making them lose by relying on luck. This night's donk was a kid who insisted on being called Chris's instead of Chris because regular names were too boring. Right from the start, this punk went all in on every hand, even if he had bad cards, and knocked out 3 players in 3 rounds with his crazy bluffs. After folding 9 good hands because of straights and flushes, Jacob finally got a pair of aces. Chris, being his usual reckless self, went all in again, making it clear that this was the only way to play. Jacob couldn't fold this time. The donk wasn't letting anyone play real poker, so this was his best chance. Plus, if he won, he would double his money and move up in the rankings. Jacob called the donk and saw exactly what he expected: a 3 of hearts and a 6 of clubs, basically nothing. It was just a silly move by the donk. Jacob's happiness grew when the dealer revealed a red ace with a 9 and a 3 on the table. There was no way the annoying kid could beat his 3 aces, even though he had a pair of 3s. Jacob couldn't help but grin as he tried not to enjoy the kid's misery. But then, the next card, called the turn, showed another 3, and Jacob felt a bit nervous. It would take a big stroke of luck for the donk to win, but there was still a chance. When the last card, the river, showed the 4th 3, Jacob couldn't believe it. It felt like a punch to his stomach, and he doubled over. How could fate be so cruel? His bright future just seconds ago was now destroyed, and the kid across the table laughed at him. To the donk, it was all a joke, and Jacob was the punchline. Jacob wasn't sure how he left the casino. It was all a blur. Once outside, he threw up the only beer he had time to drink, and his vision slowly came back, though everything still looked red. What was he going to do now? Where could he go? He hadn't played long enough to get a free room, and the 30 cents in his pocket wouldn't help. Since he came on the bus, he didn't even have a car to sleep in. He had lost everything to a lucky jerk with 4 of a kind. On his knees next to his vomit, Jacob couldn't move. His body and mind shut down, and he sat there for almost an hour. If it weren't for the annoying laughter of the donk passing by, he might not have snapped back at all. Chris's was bragging to an attractive lady about being a great poker player while she laughed insincerely. They didn't notice him, and he found himself getting up and quietly following them. There was no plan, just a strong, burning anger that made him stay behind the couple. As Jacob followed the annoying kid, he didn't notice anything around him. All he could think about was the back of the little punk's head. Jacob never thought of himself as a violent person, let alone someone who could hurt someone, but right now, he wasn't so sure. Soon, they were in a stairwell, going down flights of stairs, and then they were outside again. They were on the roof of a parking lot, and the donk was clicking the alarm on his fancy Lotus Sport 380 car while the girl admired it. Only then did they notice Jacob. "Yo! Sneaking up on me, huh?" The kid, who was clearly very white, tried to sound tough, using words like OG and trying to act like he was from the streets. Jacob balled his hands into fists, his face turning red, but he couldn't speak or move. "Wait. I know you." The younger man recognized Jacob. "You're that sad dude I beat with the 4 threes." He laughed meanly and got right in Jacob's face. "You got something to say, Gramps? Step up. Go ahead, if you're feeling brave." Jacob wanted to punch the younger man so bad. He didn't have anything else to live for, so why not? If he ended up in jail, at least he'd have a place to sleep. But something deep inside him stopped him, like the fear that freezes a deer in the headlights. Jacob felt stuck, like he couldn't fight or run. It was as if his fight or flight instinct wouldn't work, he was frozen. Chris's jumped at Jacob, making him flinch, but the younger man just laughed and walked away. "You ain't doing nothing, old man," Jacob yelled at himself inside, urging himself to move forward and let out all his anger on the annoying kid's face. But he didn't, he couldn't. He stood there, unable to talk or move, just watching as the kid got into the cool car with the girl, and then spat at him through the window. Blinding anger kept Jacob in the same spot for a whole minute after he heard the loud engine driving away, leaving him alone. What kind of man was he? Not only did he let the kid ruin his career, but he also stood there and took insults and spit. The anger kept bubbling up as he walked to the edge of the parking lot roof, and it was all focused on himself. He felt like a coward, and there seemed to be nothing left for him in this world except enduring one last insult and then ending it all. Jacob climbed up to the edge and looked down. There really seemed to be nothing worth living for. His heart was filled with hate and regret, and he just wanted it all to be over. Tired of feeling anxious and scared of losing everything, he thought this was the best decision. Scary people wanting money would be looking for him soon anyway. Looking down at the concrete sidewalk for stories below, he was sure that's where he wanted to end up, just a stain for some city worker to clean up. Except, he couldn't do it. He really wanted to, but just like when he froze standing up to the punk who was much younger, he was stuck again. His brain kept telling his body to jump, but his muscles wouldn't listen. Trapped and unable to move, tears filled his eyes. It was hard to imagine being more disgusted with himself. He wished he could take one step forward with the determination of a Japanese warrior committing harakiri, but he couldn't even do that small thing. "You need a hand there, buddy?" A deep, rough voice came from behind Jacob, nearly making him jump over the edge on its own. "Who's there?" Jacob called back, unable to turn his head while feeling frozen. "Just a guy, buddy." Jacob felt a hand patting his lower back. "Just a guy who doesn't seem to be having as bad a day as you. You planning on jumping?" There was something about the man's honest question and the way he spoke that made Jacob feel strangely comforted, like they were talking about the weather or UNLV basketball. Yeah, that was the plan. But the man behind him pressed. But I can't do it. You want to live then? No. Jacob screamed. No, darn it, no. I want to be dead more than anything in the world. I just can't. I don't know why. I mean, it's just one step. One little step, and this nightmare can be over with. Well, gee whiz, buddy, that sounds rough. The man's words might have sounded a bit sarcastic, but his voice sounded sincere. Is there anything I can do to help? Jacob didn't take long to respond. Push me. Please, just push me. Oh wow, buddy, you really want me to help kill you? The man sounded almost amused. More than anything, I'm begging you. Please help me. After a moment of silence, the man replied. Okay, buddy. You seem like you're in real need of help. I can help you with this problem. But not here. Not like this. I'm not trying to spend the rest of my life in prison for aiding you in your time of need. As soon as he said okay, Jacob's muscles began to relax, slowly releasing their control back to him. He felt the man grab his hand to help him turn and climb down from the short wall as he spoke. I know you probably think it'll just look like a suicide, but heck, man, you've seen those shows, Law and Order, NCIS and such. There's no telling what kind of evidence I could leave behind. You don't want Olivia and Stabler putting me away too, do ya? Jacob shook his head, and now, with both feet firmly on the ground again, he was able to get a good look at his new companion. Feeling a bit ashamed of his first thought, Jacob noticed that the man looked like he might be homeless. There were many in the area, often wearing ragged clothing that never seemed to fit right, pants too short, shirt too big, and a coat practically burying them. The man's shoes were wrapped tightly with the same gray duct tape that covered several holes in his pants and coat, somehow holding his entire outfit together. The man was short, maybe not even 5 feet tall, with messy hair and a long, scruffy beard that reached the third row of buttons on his coat, if the coat still had buttons. He had a smell, not like body odor, but more like dirt or an old, musty house. It wasn't great, but also not terrible. For some reason, it reminded Jacob of his grandparents' attic, a place he explored a lot as a small child. So if you really want me to help you kick the metaphorical bucket, then you'll need to work with me. We'll need to go someplace else, someplace safe to do what we need to do without any issues. Jacob just nodded. In his current state of mind, it made perfect sense. On top of everything else, he didn't want to ruin someone else's life. If this man was really willing to help him, he would do whatever he said. Do you know some place like that? He asked. The wild-looking little man smiled hugely, which might make most people cringe, but Jacob found it reassuring. He really didn't care about anything at this point, even if it meant going to an unknown place with a possible crazy person. That was probably the only type that would help him now anyway. Oh yes, my friend, I have exactly the perfect place in mind. Why don't you come with me then? Jacob couldn't find a downside and followed the other man to the stairwell. As they went down to the base level of the garage, they talked briefly. By the way, buddy, what's your name? Jacob, and yours? They call me Leon. Lean, laughing Leon, living like a lion, loving like a liar. That's what they say anyway. Leon was obviously a bit out of his mind. When they reached the bottom, Jacob asked, "Why are you going to do this for me, Leon?" The question stopped him in his tracks, and he turned to look back at Jacob. "I don't know if I can answer that yet, Jacob. You got your reasons for wanting to check out, and I got my reasons for wanting to help you. Maybe when we get to where we're going, I can answer that for you, but for now..." He patted Jacob on the arm. "For now, let's just get to where we're going." Where they were going turned out to be a door in the basement of the garage that led to a sewer system access tunnel. They passed several authorized personnel-only signs on the way, but Jacob didn't care anymore. Knowing death was coming and even welcoming it felt freeing. It gave him the freedom to ignore the usual rules or at least not care about them. The tunnel turned into another one and then another until Jacob had no idea where they were. He trusted Leon was actually leading them somewhere. It was dark, with only occasional service lights that didn't provide much light. The smell of damp urine and other unpleasant things hung in the air. After a short while, they stopped in the middle of a tunnel, and Leon bent down to remove a metal grate from a side panel. "We're going in here," Leon motioned. "You're kidding." Leon just chuckled. "We need privacy. Trust me, no one's following us in there." Leon climbed through first, reluctantly. Jacob followed, struggling to fit through in a way that Leon didn't. A short crawl through the vent led to a larger room, which was apparently Leon's humble home. "Make yourself at home," he said as they shuffled in. Once Leon lit a gas lamp, Jacob was surprised to see the number of things the little man had brought in. There were chairs, a table, a mattress in a corner, and even a television hooked up to a portable charger, which baffled the mind as to how it was brought in. It wasn't luxurious, but it had a homey comfort that was unexpected. Two walls were covered with pictures cut from magazines. A third wall held sewer system maps, while the last had a large, red pentagram. Jacob gasped in surprise. "Is that blood?" Leon chuckled again. "Oh no! Of course not. It's Valspar premium latex. Although, I believe the color was blood red. Actual blood would never have stayed that red. It tends to brown with time. So, not great for decorative purposes." He motioned to a chair. "Have a seat, Jacob. Let's talk about this for a bit. Make a plan, so to speak. I don't need to know why you're doing this for me, I guess." Jacob pulled up a seat next to Leon, so they were face to dirty face. "I guess all I'd ask is that we make it quick and as painless as possible." Leon nodded. "I can do that. I don't want to cause you any physical pain. I'm here to help," Leon reassured Jacob. Jacob was thankful. He thought about the possibility of ending up in a scene from one of the Saw movies while in the tunnels. It was a bit scary, but he was willing to take the risk if it meant putting an end to his pain. "I have just what you need." Leon jumped up and started rummaging through a box in a corner. Jacob watched him, but his attention was drawn to the pentagram. That's where he was looking when Leon slid a needle into his neck and injected him with something. The room started getting dark, and Jacob realized he was about to pass out. Jacob slept for a while, in a dark, dreamless sleep. When he woke up, panic set in. He couldn't move his arms or legs. It was hard to open his eyes, but when he did, Leon was there. "Hey, sleepyhead. Glad to see you're back." Jacob struggled to move his eyelids and mouth. His tongue felt slow, like it was moving through molasses to get the words out, but somehow he managed. "What did you do to me?" "Relax, Jacob. You said you didn't want the pain, right?" Leon leaned forward and flicked the middle of Jacob's forehead with his finger. There was an audible pop in his head and a sense of reverberation, but Leon was right, he couldn't feel it at all. "You see, my friend, I could chop off both your arms and legs, and you wouldn't feel a thing. I realize not being able to move is probably a little unnerving, but, well, I think the trade-off is worth it, don't you?" Jacob did. He was actually overwhelmed by the action, and tears blurred his vision a bit. This was really going to happen. The pain was really going to come to an end. "Thank you, Leon. I don't deserve this." "Thank you." Leon nodded. "Yeah, okay. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I haven't actually done anything yet. I have to be honest, Jacob. I'm not sure that I can kill you yet." "What the heck?" Jacob tried his best to yell. "I didn't say I wasn't going to. Let's see, how do I say this? Leon's brow furrowed as he struggled to explain. I don't have a problem ending your life, buddy, but you have to convince me that I should. As it stands, I can't kill you. I'm not sure you're ready. I'll beg you if you want, Jacob cried. Please, I'm ready. I need to die. Well, you see, that's just it. Look, I know you don't understand. Jacob didn't. But all I'm asking is that we sit here for a bit and talk. Tell me more about yourself and your situation. After all, you might be leaving this world, but I'll still have to live with this act. I need some more information to make this okay with my religion. Jacob thought he understood, and that it even made some sense. Religion, he asked. Not important for now. Besides, you're the one that needs to answer some questions. Jacob nodded for him to continue as best he could. What do you want to know? Great. Leon clapped his hands together. Where to start? Why don't you tell me about your family, Jacob? Without thinking, he answered, I don't have any. None? No mother, no father? No siblings? No. I never knew my birth parents. I was a ward of the state, grew up in foster care and orphanages for the most part. Your whole life? Jacob let out an involuntary giggle as the notion of being on the world's most bizarre talk show shot through his mind. It was all very surreal. No, not my whole life. I was adopted by my foster mother when I was 17. I was practically on my own by that point anyway, so it was mostly a symbolic act. But she did love me, and I did love her. Her husband had passed away a good 20 years before I met her, and she filled her life and home with children who needed it. Although she'd adopted a lot of kids over the years, for one great year, it was just the two of us. She's the only family I've ever known. She sounds nice. Is she gone now? No. I mean, I don't think so. We've not spoken for a while. What's a while? Leon prompted. I don't know. It's been a number of years. I was traveling a lot, and we just kind of fell out of touch. But you still love her? Yeah, of course. Very much so. She's old now? Yeah. Pretty old. Late 70s now, I think. Why do you ask that? Leon nodded thoughtfully. Just wondering how she'll react when she finds out that you've died. If she's old, well, it might not be too good for her. Jacob hadn't thought about that and suddenly felt shame. How would she react when she finds out? The last time they'd spoken, she talked about having heart issues. There might have even been something about a pacemaker, but he couldn't remember. This was the kind of news that could hurt someone her age. There was a period of silence while Jacob wrestled with the notion. Was this something he could really do to her? He was more than ready to end his own life, but he wasn't ready to end hers. Finally, Leon. Yeah, buddy? What were you planning on doing with my body? Leon crossed his legs and put his notched finger to his chin with a considerate expression. ChatGPT. Good question, buddy. I guess I'm not too sure. I have access to a number of sewer maps, so I could drop it off topside in a number of places. Or, for that matter, I suppose there's a number of places I could hide it down below as well. I'm open to suggestions, I guess. Do you have any requests? I don't know. I just don't think I want Miss May to find out about my death. That's your mother? Yes. May Sarah Leroy, Miss May. And you think your disappearance will be easier on her? Jacob honestly didn't know. It was possible that she might not even know he had disappeared. He hadn't tried to contact her in a long time, and she was old. He might be able to spare her that way. I think it might be best if I'm never found. Best for Miss May, you mean? Yeah, that's what I mean. Well, that might be difficult. Might even involve a degree of dismemberment or some other method to destroy your remains entirely. You got any problems with that? Jacob nodded his head no, or at least he thought he did. When Leon didn't respond, he realized that the movement probably wasn't as extensive as it was intended to be. He didn't know what the heck the old man had injected him with, but while he wasn't entirely immobile, it was damn hard to move at all. Jacob had never realized how acutely attached his sense of touch was to his ability to control his limbs. It felt like Novocaine for his entire body. You have my permission to do whatever you think is best. Just promise me that you'll go through with this. I just can't do this anymore. Leon smiled and patted Jacob's knee despite his inability to feel it. I give you my word, Jacob. If you convince me that you're ready, then I promise I'll go through with it. Jacob was becoming slightly agitated, but did his best to smile and nod. So let's continue then. Why don't you tell me about your friends? Jacob sighed. I don't have any. Leon chuckled. You didn't have any family either, but lo and behold, we got a Miss May. Everyone's got at least one friend, even me. You telling me you've never had a friend, ever? Well, I didn't exactly say that. Of course, I've had friends before. Okay then, that's some progress. Why don't you tell me about the one you considered your best friend? What is it they say, your BFF? The agitation began to rise a little. I don't understand why you want to know this stuff. What does this have anything to do with killing me? Leon leaned forward and put both his hands on Jacob's numbed knees. This is no little thing you're asking of me, buddy. I think the very least you can do is humor an old man before you cast off your mortal coil. You're not giving me anything for this job, and I can assure you, this is gonna be one hell of a job for me once you're gone, so you can just consider this your payment for services. Plus, you've still not convinced me that you're ready yet, and if I want answers to these questions to help convince me, then perhaps you should just answer them. Jacob sighed and pushed the agitation deep down. Leon was totally right. Okay, you're right. I'm sorry. It's okay, buddy, nothing to die over. Leon chortled again, and Jacob found himself beginning to find the old man's quirky humor a little endearing, like the Mad Hatter or Doc Brown. And now back to our interview, ladies and gentlemen. Leon turned to an imaginary audience, where our new buddy, Jacob, was about to tell us about his BFF. He turned back to Jacob and held an invisible microphone to his face before laughing again and waving it off. Okay. Jacob tried desperately to tune out the surrealistic nature of the moment. Okay. I guess I've really only had one close friend. I've known a lot of guys from the poker tours that I liked and was friendly with, maybe grab a beer from time to time, but only one that I would have done anything for. I probably would have given my life for him if I could have. Pain was evident in his voice and eyes, which peered down at the dirty floor. Past tense, I see. So your friend's not with us anymore? After a few seconds of silence, Jacob answered, No. Paul died a few years ago. He'd spent the majority of his life as an alcoholic. It finally caught up with him, liver failure. He was on the list for a while, but we all knew it was nonsense. Someone with that kind of history always gets pushed to the bottom if they even get on it at all, which he had to pull some strings just to do. He was in the hospital for a week before he finally succumbed, hooked up to machines. Each day more machines. In the end, he was put into a chemically induced coma, and they were the only things keeping him alive. It was hell watching him wither away in just a few days. Leon shook his head with sympathy. Oh buddy, that's really a shame. I'm very sorry to hear about that. Kind of ironic though, don't you think? This brought Jacob's gaze back to his own. What do you mean? What's ironic about it? Seems pretty obvious to me, buddy. Kind of surprised you don't see it. Well, I don't, so enlighten me. Okay, don't lose your head. Yet another chuckle. Just seems to me that if you were ready to make the decision to check out then, instead of now, then you could have saved your friend's life. After all, unless I'm mistaken, you've got a perfectly good liver in you now. A liver that could have saved Paul's life, or even one that could save someone else's life now. None of this had even occurred to Jacob, and even with his numbness, he felt like he had been slapped in the face. Past tense, I see. So your friend's not with us anymore? After a few seconds of silence, Jacob answered, no. Paul died a few years ago. He'd spent most of his life as an alcoholic. It finally caught up with him, liver failure. He was on a list for a while, but we all knew it was nonsense. Someone with that kind of history always gets pushed to the bottom if they even get on it at all, which he had to pull some strings just to do. He was in the hospital for a week before he finally succumbed, hooked up to machines. Each day more machines. In the end, he was put into a chemically induced coma, and they were the only things keeping him alive. It was tough watching him wither away in just a few days. Leon shook his head with sympathy. Oh buddy, that's really sad. I'm very sorry to hear about that. Kind of ironic though, don't you think? This brought Jacob's gaze back to his own. What do you mean? What's ironic about it? Seems pretty obvious to me, buddy. Kind of surprised you don't see it. Well, I don't, so enlighten me. Okay, don't lose your head. Yet another chuckle. Just seems to me that if you were ready to make the decision to check out then, instead of now, then you could have saved your friend's life. After all, unless I'm mistaken, you've got a perfectly good liver in you now. A liver that could have saved Paul's life, or even one that could save someone else's life now. None of this had even occurred to Jacob, and even with his numbness, he felt like he had been slapped in the face. In fact, Leon continued, seems to me that you've got all kinds of organs that could be used to save several lives. A heart, liver, kidney, hell, they could probably use your brain at this point. Just seems a shame to waste it all. Once again, the crazy, old man was right, and it was starting to bother him. He had been so scared and selfish in his life, and now in the hour of his death, nothing had changed. Jacob had a good heart. He wanted to help people. Much of the money he had made over the years had been given to various charities and people he found in need. Now he had an opportunity to actually save lives in his death, and he didn't even have the courage to do that. Cowardly, just cowardly. You're right, Leon. You're totally right. Jacob shook his head. It was getting a little easier. There's got to be a way for me to give my organs to someone that needs them. Like, I don't know, maybe drop my body off near a hospital or something and with a note or something. That might work. Perhaps, Leon replied, but then, what about Miss May? If you give your organs away, she'll definitely know that you're dead. Then maybe she's donating her organs as well. Jacob scowled. That's too far, Leon. Don't joke about her. Keep your britches on, buddy. It may sound like a joke to you, but ask yourself if I'm wrong. Again, he wasn't. It was starting to get old. This was turning into a decision involving the lesser of two evils. Leon kept going. Let's move on for now. Paul died, and his death was very hard on you. We don't have to go into that. Have you never been married? No kids? The question helped to disarm the dilemma in his mind, bringing Jacob back into the moment. No, not that I know of. He was able to muster a small laugh at the cliched joke. I dated several women but was only serious with one, Sarah. We were engaged for a while, but it just didn't work out. In the long run, most of the women I was with couldn't take the lifestyle that came with my profession. Cards right? Poker, I think you said? Jacob nodded. Yeah, poker. I was on the World Series of Poker Tour. There was a lot of travel, a lot of late nights, a lot of women hanging around. You'd be surprised at the quality of the poker groupies. I was. We never got around to having any children, but we talked about it. I always wanted to be a dad, believe it or not. I guess it just wasn't in the cards for me though, pun intended. Leon didn't laugh. You've got some bad ones, buddy. What's that, kids? No, puns. They're not good. Coming from me, that should tell you something. That being said, why can't you have kids still? I mean, hypothetically speaking, since we know that you're not going to be alive to do so, but was there some reason you couldn't have met a different woman and have had children? Did you never want to do that, or was poker more important? It was a little unnerving how the old man was getting into his head. I don't know. I guess there's no reason why I couldn't. I just never met a woman on the pro circuit that I could have seen that working out with. You know what I mean? But you're not on the circuit anymore, right? From what I could gather, that plays a large part in your decision to shove off, unless I'm wrong? Well, it's not as simple as that. Jacob paused. But yeah, I'm not able to play professionally anymore. So you could say that you entered a new portion of your life where it might be possible to meet a different type of woman, the type of woman you might consider loving and having those kids you wanted with. Jacob had to think for a moment. Through all the anguish and pain of losing his old life, he hadn't given any consideration to what a new life could be like. He could only see his current circumstance as a culmination, an ending, if he had his way, the ultimate ending. There had been no thought given to the possibility of happiness beyond this point, no credence given to the concept of a new beginning. Was it even possible? Could he find a life past this? Could he find love? These were new ideas rattling around a dark canyon, sparking points of light wherever they touched. He was broke, but he had been broke before. There was a point where he built something out of nothing, so he knew it could be done. It wasn't like he was completely devoid of other skills. I guess you're right. But I'm broke and I owe money to people who would kill me anyway if I didn't pay them. Leon stood and stretched, igniting a twinge of jealousy in Jacob. He began pacing in the small space in front of their chairs. What do you owe these bad people exactly? Jacob sighed again. He really didn't want to reveal this type of information, but at this point they were beyond the point of concealing anything. What good would it do? I owe 25 grand to one group and 15 to another. So 40,000 then? That's not too bad. I mean, it ain't chicken scratch, but I've heard of guys getting in for hundreds of thousands, millions even. Seems hard for me to believe that you'd get off for 40G. Seems to me that if you worked with those guys, they'd probably listen. I happen to know that they'd much rather get back their money than have to deal with a possible murder investigation. More sensibility. Where the hell was this coming from? You watch a lot of the Dr. Phil show, Leon? Leon stopped pacing for a moment and brought his face down next to Jacob's with a stern expression. He could smell the old man's breath. Let me tell you one thing, buddy. Dr. Phil is not who you think he is. That creature from the Oprah Lagoon is a black magic high priest with more power than the president. What you see on TV is as above, and you don't get to see is so below, and, trust me, you don't want to. He leaned back up and returned to pacing. And to answer your question, yes. I enjoy his show quite a bit. There was a woman yesterday who was sleeping with her daughter's husband and a friend of her grandson's. Quite gripping television. Okay, sorry I asked. But all of that aside, I don't see any way that I could build a constructive life while being under the thumb of the mob for that much money, even if they didn't kill me. Leon continued the apparent intervention. So there's no one you could borrow the money from to pay them back? Mortgage a house? Sell a car? A rich Nigerian prince? Say, what about Miss May? Does she have any money? Does she own her home? That actually sparked a possible idea. Miss May did own her home. Jacob knew that because he was the one that paid off her mortgage a decade before with his winnings. He had the entire house renovated at the time as well, increasing the value of the property extensively. It was actually entirely reasonable to think that Miss May would let him take out a mortgage on the home. It was probably his inner will anyway. You know, Leon, as much as I loathe to admit it, you might be onto something. I could actually get the money from Miss May. I don't know why I didn't think about it before, but I could probably get enough money to pay my dad as well as a cheap car and apartment. I'd be at rock bottom, but it would be possible. Leon, apparently paced out, sat back down. Take a look around, buddy. You really think that's rock bottom? I live in a hidden room in the sewer system. Jacob smiled, or at least he thought he was. There was no sense of feeling returning at all. Point taken, Leon. By the way, what the hell did you give me? I'm almost afraid to ask. Does it really matter, buddy? After all, you're getting ready to die. What do you care what I shot you up with? That was the question that tilted the scales for Jacob. I guess it matters. I guess it matters because I'm not so sure I want to die now. Oh, really? Leon feigned surprise, poorly. Oh, please, I'm an idiot, but I'm not dumb. I know what you've been trying to do, and it's been working. I was so caught up in the intense pain and loss of my situation and couldn't see anything beyond that, but you've helped me see further ahead. You've shown me the pain it would cause and the selfishness of the act itself. You've made me see that there could be a future for me, a very real chance for happiness and love. Damn you, Leon, you're a friggin' Clarence. Clarence? Leon asked. Yeah, you know, it's a wonderful life. Clarence was the angel that showed Jimmy Stewart how bad the world would be without him. That's you, man. You're my Clarence. So, how long does this stuff last? I think I might be ready to get out of here. Leon stood up and walked over to the only table in the meager room and returned with a large Bowie knife in tow. Jacob's brow furrowed instinctively. What's the knife for, Leon? Well, buddy, a promise is a promise. Don't worry, it's not gonna hurt in the least. No, Leon. I don't think you understand. I changed my mind. I don't want to die now. Leon nodded in agreement and smiled his massive smile. I understand, buddy. You've convinced me. You're ready. You don't have to try to convince me anymore. What the hell are you talking about? I said I don't want to die. Put that knife down, Leon. You're scaring me. This is more of your psycho bullshit, right? You're bluffing me. This is a big bluff, right? Jacob tried to push forward to his feet but still couldn't master control of his numbed muscles and nearly fell to the ground. Leon gently caught him and held him back into the chair. I'm not trying to scare you, buddy. Thing is, due to my religion, I was unable to help you as long as you actually wanted to die. Now that you want to live again, well, you're ready. I can keep my promise. Jacob's eyes widened in fear as his mind struggled with the other man's words. He was still trying to piece it together fully when the knife slid into one side of his abdomen. There was a slight tug as it sliced from one side to the other, spilling his intestines to the floor. Jacob looked down at the gore with horror. It didn't hurt at all. He tried to raise his hand, but the strength was ebbing away exponentially. The last thing he could see before the darkness took him was a bright red pentagram on the wall. The last thing he heard was Leon's soothing voice.